In 2010, your boy entered a contest, won the keys to the internet's pioneer web series, and then sat behind the wheel as it crashed and burned into the ground. My name is Austin, and depending on who you ask, I killed LonelyGirl15. But like with a lot of things, that's only true from a certain point of view. Stick around, and I'll tell you mine. Web series are a dime a dozen nowadays. There's tons of awards shows dedicated to them. They even have an Emmy category. Times have changed. I mean, arguably one of the best shows of the past decade didn't even air on TV. It was a web series. But back in 2006, YouTube was still in its infancy, and the idea of a compelling narrative story playing out over online video instead of TV was unheard of. That's when LonelyGirl15 dropped.
Hi guys!
Presented as the video journal of a 16-year-old girl named Bree, LG15 became an internet sensation almost overnight. When the show debuted, it played things non-fiction-like, maintaining the illusion that Bree was a real girl. She had a MySpace page. She even chatted with the fans. This eventually spawned an all-out investigation by internet sleuths into proving the whole thing a hoax. Eventually, the creators of the show came clean, and LG15 started to hit the big time as the first real successful web series. It broke ground on what exactly an internet show was supposed to be. It won Biggest Web Hit on VH1's Big in 06 awards and was featured in tons of publications and would eventually generate a number of spin-off shows, some successful, some not. With an increased audience came the pressure to make a bigger show. So the fictional Bree left her house, and LG15 eventually evolved into a multi-character series with a complex story involving secretive evil organizations and big-time action sequences. It all started out great, but somewhere along the line, the series lost its flair. By December of 08, the storyline was a mess of plot holes, and viewership averaged only a fraction of the numbers it used to pull in on the regular. If LonelyGirl15 taught us how web series are born, it also taught us how web series die. Sensing the stagnant future of the franchise, the creators of the show at Equal Entertainment put the series on hold and announced a contest called LG15 The Show Is Yours, which allowed fans to submit pilot episodes and trailers of spin-off shows based on the LonelyGirl15 mythology. The selected pilot got to become an official LG15 franchise show. The first season of TSIY got off to a rocky start, but eventually produced the first fan spin-off, LG15 The Last. Being a fan-produced show, the quality wasn't on the same page as the original series, and the absence of the original cast probably didn't help matters either. The Last struggled to gain traction with an audience outside of its dwindling fan base, and by the time it reached its conclusion, most folks were hoping things would just go back to the original series. That cliffhanger the show ended on would be resolved, and closure would finally be brought to a franchise that had seemingly run its course. Instead, the creators at Equal retooled a few things about that fan contest and launched TSIY 2, this time offering a $5,000 production budget to the winning pilot and granting them first dibs on the new social networking platform that Equal had been developing called Umbrella. The hope on Equal's side was likely that the new show would give them an opportunity to test out Umbrella and maybe generate some new business for their company, all while saving a pretty penny. As for the original LG15 series, the folks at Equal stayed mum on their plans. Right, so here's where I come in. First, some background. I discovered LG15 in probably mid-2007. I followed it on and off the next year. At the time, I was a little smart-mouthed whippersnapper who was working on being a stereotypical film student. I was learning how cameras, editing, visual effects, all that jazz worked, and as I slowly became more proficient in the trade, I wanted to try out new things. I distinctly remember telling my buddy Lance one day as we were watching LG15 together, "Dude, if I had their resources, I could make a show so much better than this." By early 2008, LG15 was starting to hit those plot hole bumps, and so one night, I decided to make a fan video. I turned my new camera on in my bedroom and filmed a quick little ditty about the latest story developments. I became Mason, a snarky teenage kid who poked fun at the show's flaws, but did so in character. I uploaded the video and then went to bed. Woke up the next day, and suddenly, I'm the most popular dude of the dwindling fan base. I guess at the time, the video's editing made it stand out from the rest of the fan material, and most community members got a good laugh out of hearing their show get ripped on for 7.5 minutes by a kid who laid down jokes grounded in the show's increasingly confusing mythology. After getting my first dose of real attention and reading some pretty encouraging comments, I started thinking to myself, yeah, I can make some more of these. Over the next few weeks, I started creating videos that tied into the flagship series. The official LG15 channel would put out their latest episode, and within a day, a new Mason video would pop up in response. Pretty soon after that, I started getting, the hate messages that come along with the internet, so I got discouraged. I decided I've got too much going on in my life, and I can't do this anymore. So I killed the fan character Mason off. I put an end to the thing. Right, so that's the background. Let's fast forward now and get back to TSIY2. So, $5,000 and the use of the official LG15 site sounded like a pretty sweet deal. So, I wrote up a story treatment for a spin-off under the title of LG15 Outbreak. I shot the pilot and submitted it. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, bam, Mason fever. A few days later, I got the golden ticket in my inbox. I had won the contest. The show was mine. So what I'm going to do now is tell you how I wanted Outbreak to go. The whole point behind the title Outbreak was that the series would revolve around a rescue attempt of the original show's main character Jonas, who was being held captive by the bad guys in the last official episode. The hope was that Outbreak would be a bridge series to return to the original show. My series would conclude with a trade, Jonas for Intel, and then the main series had a starting point from which to make a return. In my mind, Outbreak would tide fans over, while Equal worked out how they were going to restart the original series. So, yeah, needless to say, that ain't how it went down. From the start of production, I realized I'm in way over my head. The original contract for the show was 2 episodes a week for 8 weeks, for a total of 16 episodes. In retrospect, that was a sufficient amount. But me, wanting to, I guess, prove a point or something, said, nah, let's shoot for way more than that. In total, we ended up producing 42 episodes, maybe 3 of which I was actually happy with. Turns out, making a show on a limited budget with high expectations from a frustrated fan base was a lot harder than I was expecting. Production had all kinds of problems. Heavy winter storms made shooting 10 times more complicated and made locations we had secured suddenly unusable. Technical problems, including broken cameras, glitchy editing software, and non-functioning microphones made post-production of episodes a total headache and a half. The schedules of the cast were hard to align, so the main group didn't get to film together as much as we had wanted. Further, the social platform Umbrella that Equal had been developing was going through some, let's just call them, growing pains, and certain functions we were expecting didn't arrive, making puzzles and supplemental story material a challenge in and of itself. Most of them had to either be scrapped or remade on the fly. This presented more problems when it came to producing episodes, as puzzles were meant to be integrated into the videos. That's kinda hard to do when the puzzles we shot around suddenly start getting scrapped at the last minute. So, yeah, it was tough. Also, YouTube presented its own challenges. Uploading back then was nigh impossible on the internet setup that I had, and sometimes episodes were released later than we wanted. Even if we managed to get the videos uploaded on time, there was no guarantee that the social platform on Equal's end would be ready for them. I guess such is the nature of producing a show in Missouri, then piping it through to Los Angeles for inspection, site integration, and eventual release. And that's not even to mention how awful I was at trying to keep the storyline from unraveling. Due to various factors I can't imagine it would be profitable to explain, changes in our original story vision were necessary. Plot points got rewritten, and it started to become pretty apparent that Outbreak wasn't gonna have a lot of outbreaks in it after all. While all this was going on, I had to keep in mind the fans and audience members who were watching every step of the way. Now don't get me wrong, most of the fans were supportive of the show despite some of the problems, but there was a good number of folks who, let's just say, weren't thrilled with the product. Keep in mind, I'd never done anything like this before. I was a fan who wanted to play in the big leagues. And suddenly I realized not only had I been signed and called up, but I'd been named team captain, coach, and general manager. Point is, at 20 years old, the pressure was getting to me. The whole thing tested every fiber of my being. I went from being the guy that poked fun at a web series to the guy responsible for the future of that web series. It was a no-win situation. I wanted to swoop in, revamp the series, unshackle it from story problems it had boxed itself into, and provide a clear path for the show to continue after my departure. In retrospect, this is totally not what TSIY was designed for. Outbreak was a fan show that tried to stand on the same level as the original series. It didn't meet expectations, and chances were it probably never would have. Outbreak pulled in okay numbers, more than the first TSIY show, but it didn't reinvigorate the franchise, and it didn't save the series. What it did do, for me, was give perspective on what it means to be on the creative end of something, and experience on how to deal with folks' sometimes unreasonable expectations. See, while all of this was going on, there was this guy. Let's just call him Bad Rebel 88. He was, let's just say, an outspoken member of the LG15 community. Bad Rebel 88's hobbies include, as far as I can tell, hating on everything around him, and reveling in his own lack of empathy. Bad Rebel 88 isn't a troll. He's worse than a troll. He's a step down from that. He's an internet sociopath. Bad Rebel 88 isn't snarky for the sake of humor, he's just mean. Being mean is his favorite thing. He continuously hurled insults at the LG-15 creators, lambasting them over the years for the poor quality of the show's writing and the franchise's dwindling audience. He did this all the time. He'd hurl personal attacks at the creators, and he'd write page after page of angry scribblings directed at anyone who dared to have a different opinion than him on the quality of the show. Bad Rebel 88 likely did this as a way to express his frustration with a show that he at one time loved. Maybe he thought that his constant mean-spirited hyper-criticism would cause the creators to try harder, to work diligently to make sure the show would meet his standards. Maybe he behaved the way he did because he didn't like the fact that a community he was a high-profile member of was shrinking. What he didn't realize, and probably still doesn't, is that he was one of the reasons why it was shrinking. It turns out constantly being a jerk to everybody around you doesn't really do well for building a community. Bad Rebel 88 was, whether he knew it or not, a one-man wrecking crew. He was essentially a man running around inside of a burning building, pouring gasoline everywhere, and then complaining that nobody was putting out the fire. His toxic behavior did nothing to inspire the creators to work harder on the show, and in fact, it probably discouraged them from giving their all. I mean, why on earth would they invest so much time and effort to create a product that would please an audience when the most vocal member of said audience would only trash them and berate them? The creators, for their part, remained constantly respectful of Bad Rebel 88, but things never improved. When Outbreak started, Bad Rebel 88 had a new target: me. I was the object of his disdain. He hated me with the heat of 10,000 suns. Never had I dealt with an internet hater like this before. Bad Rebel 88 hated me with such a passion and fury that it made creating hard. Think about it, our team would go through an unbelievable amount of stress and hard work to create an episode. And minutes after releasing it, Bad Rebel 88 would be sure to let us know that our show was bad and we should feel bad. And he'd pepper into his criticism as many personal insults as possible. Way to go, dude. This still gets me mad thinking about it. Who would write something like this? Who would say that about somebody? Really felt that community love back then. Bad Rebel 88 reinforced what I already knew. People on the internet can be real jerks. But, in spite of pitiful people like that, I got through it. Outbreak concluded, and we ended up shooting on par. It wasn't going to change the world, but we did it. We had a job to do, we set out to do it, and we got it done. After Outbreak was over, Equal took a look at the franchise as a whole, saw that the view count on the channel was stagnant, and so they put the whole franchise on hiatus, and they never went back to it. If you're looking back on the whole thing, it's easy to make the argument that Outbreak was the final nail in the coffin for the franchise. Lots of folks hold me personally responsible for the end of the series. To them, Outbreak left a sour taste in their mouth, and I was the one that finally killed LonelyGirl15. You have to keep in mind that around this time, the community was frustrated by the lack of progression in the show, the main flagship series going on hiatus, not a lot of good communication between the creators and the audience, and some of that frustration came down on me. Maybe I deserved some of it. Maybe I deserved all of it. Maybe I didn't. Going back and reading some of these comments, it's kind of weird. I guess I didn't realize I was so disliked by various people in the community. And man, is that really what people thought about me? I mean, is that the impression I actually give people? Did I really lack that much self-awareness 7 years ago? Or is that image of me just a projection by a select few? Is it an affectation as opposed to the truth? I don't feel good about myself either way, but man, I just wanted to make something for fans of the same show as me. From my point of view, well, surprise, surprise, I'm a bit more forgiving on myself. I didn't know that Outbreak was going to be the end of the entire series. If I thought that, I obviously would have ended things differently. I was a fan who was put in charge of producing a fan season. I didn't have control over the main flagship. You want my opinion? I didn't kill LG-15. I just wasn't able to save it. I was a fan who got the opportunity to make a fan show that would be recognized as official canon. It was a great opportunity, and I'm thankful for it, and I loved doing it. I didn't have a Los Angeles-based production crew like the flagship show. I didn't have their actors, didn't have their sets, didn't have their props, I didn't have their infrastructure. I had a small budget, a few guidelines, and then had to give it my best shot within the framework that I was given. I was the most experienced of the fans who entered TSIY2, but in terms of web shows, I was inexperienced. This was my first time at bat with a web series. And I made mistakes, but I also did some things right. For its part, the LG15 franchise was recently acquired from Equal by Discourse Productions, and web series extraordinaire Jenny Powell is taking over as executive producer. The show is evidently restarting, and to the production team behind the new installment, I say good luck. Nothing but the best. I don't regret doing Outbreak, and sure, if I could go back and do it again, I'd give you a laundry list of things I can do better now, but it was the best I could do at the time. It was the best I could do with what I was given. Maybe you dug Outbreak, maybe you didn't. Maybe it was the coolest thing since sliced bread to you, maybe you were disappointed, or maybe it was just okay in your mind, nothing to write home about. Whatever your opinion on Outbreak, what's done is done. I can't go back and change anything. I can only keep creating and hope to improve with every project. I get asked sometimes if I'm ever going to do a web series again. Honestly, I really couldn't tell you. I've been focusing the past few years on feature films, doing festival circuits. I've been working on an animated series slowly for the past 2 years, but sure, okay, yeah. Outbreak left me a little gun-shy. The 2010s thus far have been more of an extended learning experience for me than anything. I'm getting better at my craft, but honestly, it's going to take me a bit before I'm ready to hop back into the saddle and let the internet watch me ride. I really need to figure out better metaphors. It's been about half a decade since Outbreak wrapped, and I don't know, I guess I felt like talking about it tonight. So, there you go. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Or don't. I don't really care.